The gymnasium buzzed with noise, the usual hum of restless students on a cold winter morning. Kids sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor, while others lounged in the bleachers, jackets bunched up beneath them. Teachers stood along the walls, arms crossed, nodding to each other over the murmuring crowd. Then the double doors opened. Officer Daniel Reyes, a 20-year veteran of the force, stepped onto the polished court, his uniform crisp, movements practiced. At his side walked Max, a striking German shepherd with a sleek coat and a white star-shaped patch on his chest. The room instantly quieted. There was something about Max that demanded attention. Controlled, powerful. Every muscle moved with intent, his amber eyes scanning the crowd as if every heartbeat echoed in his ears. This was supposed to be a routine K-9 demonstration. They'd done dozens of them at schools across the city. Command performance, scent work, applause, questions from excited children, nothing out of the ordinary. But halfway down the center aisle, Max stopped. No warning, no sound, just a sudden stillness. His ears pricked forward, his head tilted. The leash in Reyes's hand went taut, pulled with a quiet intensity that only someone who knew the dog deeply would recognize. "Max, heel," Reyes said firmly. But Max didn't move. His nose lifted, working the air. A low, unfamiliar whine escaped his throat, barely audible, but filled with something raw, something urgent. In the third row of the bleachers, a thin girl with pale skin and a blue beanie slowly stood. She looked fragile, as though a breath of wind might carry her away. Her fingers gripped the metal railing, white-knuckled. Her eyes, sunken with fatigue, widened in disbelief. Max's gaze locked with hers. Time dissolved. The buzz of the room faded into nothing. For a heartbeat, no, for eternity, it was just them. 8 years vanished in the space between one breath and the next. And for the first time in his career, Officer Reyes felt a chill crawl up his spine. Something was happening, something not in any training manual. 8 years earlier, the world was blanketed in snow. Daisy Thompson, just 7 years old, sat bundled in a puffy purple coat in the back seat of her family's old sedan. Her father, David, was driving them home after a long winter weekend, visiting her grandparents. Her mother, Rachel, dozed in the passenger seat, weary from long hospital shifts and the quiet weight of responsibility. As they turned onto a rural road, David suddenly slowed the car. A pickup truck sat idling on the shoulder, its brake lights casting red halos in the white haze. A man stood behind it, hunched over something. Daisy peered out, curiosity blooming. Then the man tossed a burlap sack into a snowy ditch. David's jaw tightened. "Stay in the car," he said, already opening his door. But Daisy, stubborn in a way only a child can be, followed. The whimpering led them to the sack. Inside were 6 tiny German shepherd puppies, 5 of them still and cold. Only one moved. He was trembling, barely breathing, with odd markings and a perfect white star on his chest. "Daddy, he's crying," Daisy whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. She reached into the sack without hesitation, scooping the frail body into her arms. He was little more than bones and soft fur. But the moment he pressed against her, he stopped shaking. That night, despite Rachel's protests, "We're not dog people, David." The puppy came home. The vet was blunt. "He's severely malnourished, probably the runt. His chances aren't great." But Daisy was unwavering. She set alarms every few hours to feed him formula. She spoke to him softly, constantly, her little voice creating a private language only he seemed to understand. When he cried, she'd wrap him in her old baby blanket and hum lullabies. He slept in her bed, nestled into the crook of her neck. By spring, he was strong enough to chase her through the backyard, all oversized paws and eager yips. She named him Max. Soon her drawings covered her bedroom walls, sketches of Max running, sitting, sleeping. He followed her everywhere, loyal as a shadow. She didn't know it then, but saving him had saved her too. The accident happened on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Daisy was 8. She'd just left a friend's house 3 blocks from home. The truck came fast around the corner, the driver never seeing the small figure crossing the street until it was too late. The impact changed everything. Multiple surgeries followed. Her left leg, hip, pelvis. Doctors pieced her back together with rods and plates. They said she would walk again, but with a permanent limp. Recovery would be long, painful, and uncertain. At first, Daisy barely spoke. Her once bright eyes dimmed. She lay in her hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, her small hands clenched in silent agony. But Max was there. He wasn't allowed in at first, but Rachel pushed until the hospital bent the rules. When he entered the room, tail low, head tilted with concern, Daisy reached for him without hesitation. He rested his head on the mattress. Didn't move, just stayed, watching her, breathing with her, waiting. Back home, he was her shadow again. During grueling physical therapy, he'd walk beside her slowly, matching her unsteady pace. When she cried, "I can't do this," Max would position himself just beyond her walker, tail wagging, eyes full of silent encouragement. She would take one more step, then another, and another. Each tiny victory felt shared. When she reached the end of a hallway, Max would leap excitedly, his joy contagious. When she collapsed from exhaustion, he would curl around her, shielding her from pain with his presence. Max is not just a pet, David once told the physical therapist. He's her reason to try. He guarded her through nightmares, nudged her awake when the terrors came. He barked gently when she stopped mid-exercise, nudging her forward like a tiny coach with fur and a heart too big for his body. Their bond deepened, not through tricks or treats, but through hardship. Max understood things even Daisy's parents couldn't. He sensed her mood before she spoke. He knew when to press close and when to sit quietly nearby. In a world that had suddenly become full of pain and limitation, Max reminded her of who she had been and who she could still be. By the time Daisy turned 9, the financial strain in the Thompson household had become impossible to ignore. David's woodworking business had suffered a severe hit in the wake of the economic downturn. Commissions dried up, clients delayed payments. Meanwhile, medical bills from Daisy's surgeries and ongoing therapy kept coming, relentless, growing like vines around the family's throat. Insurance covered some, but never enough. Rachel took on double shifts at the hospital, sometimes not returning home until the sky was already light. And through it all, Max remained. He walked with Daisy every day, slow and steady on her weak side, positioning himself like a brace she never asked for, but always relied on. He lay beside her during long nights of pain, listened silently as she whispered worries no one else would understand. Then came the knock on the door. Officer Daniel Reyes stood on their porch, accompanied by Police Chief Vernon Hale, a man with a firm handshake, sharp eyes, and an offer that stunned the room into silence. "We've heard stories about your dog," the chief said, watching Max closely, "about how he seems to anticipate needs, understand emotions, work without being trained." He nodded toward Daisy. "We believe it's because of her." He explained that the department was expanding its K-9 unit. They needed intelligent, emotionally attuned dogs, and Max fit the profile better than most they'd ever seen. With federal funding, they could offer a significant compensation to the family, enough to catch up on the mortgage, keep the lights on, pay for another year of physical therapy. "He could save lives," Chief Hale said softly, "but only with your permission." That night, David and Rachel sat at the kitchen table long after Daisy had gone to bed. The paperwork lay between them like a verdict. They weren't dog people before Max, but now they weren't sure how to be without him. "We don't have a choice," Rachel whispered. Daisy found out the next morning, and her scream, raw, unfiltered, broke something in all of them. "You can't take him," she cried, wrapping her arms around Max's neck. "He's mine. He needs me." David knelt beside her, tears filling his eyes. "Sometimes the hardest choice is the right one, honey. Max is going to help a lot of people. I don't want him to be a hero," she sobbed. "I just want him to be mine." That night, Daisy didn't sleep in her room. She and Max curled up in the backyard fort they'd built together, blankets wrapped around them, stars above, secrets between them. She whispered promises into his fur, her voice trembling with heartbreak. "I'll find you again someday, Max. Don't forget me." When the cruiser pulled up the next morning, Max walked toward it reluctantly, casting one final look over his shoulder. Daisy stood on the porch, clutching his chewed-up tennis ball, too devastated to wave. And when the door closed behind him, Max let out a quiet whine that echoed through the spring air. Low, searching, and full of grief neither of them could name. The first year without Max hollowed Daisy out. Physical therapy, once fueled by his presence, became mechanical, pointless. "She's not even trying," her new therapist muttered after sessions, frustrated by the girl's half-hearted efforts. But it wasn't about effort, it was about meaning. Without Max, nothing seemed to matter. Her parents noticed the change but didn't know how to fix it. The house felt emptier, quieter, lonelier. David began sleeping at his workshop more often. Rachel stopped putting up framed photos. The silence between them stretched into something unspoken but undeniable. At school, Daisy became invisible. The limp made her an easy target. Kids mimicked her walk in the hallways, called her Robot Girl. By 5th grade, she had perfected the art of avoiding eye contact. She ate lunch in the library, her head buried in books she couldn't finish. And still, every night, she clutched the old tennis ball that smelled faintly of Max. She kept it in a shoebox under her bed with a folded blanket, a photo, and one of his old chewed collars. Her shrine, her memory, her hope. When David moved out officially, Daisy helped him pack without saying much. "It's not forever," she told him, echoing words he once said to her. But deep down, they both knew better. Meanwhile, 90 miles away at the state K-9 training facility, Max was on a different path. He excelled quickly. Officer Reyes, now his full-time handler, watched in awe as Max picked up complex scent work faster than dogs twice his age. He could detect narcotics, track missing persons, and respond to commands with flawless precision. But there was something else, something different. "He doesn't work for treats or praise," Reyes told his supervisor. "It's like he's waiting for someone." At night, Max refused to rest unless he was facing the door. Every time it creaked open, his ears would perk, his body tense, then sag in disappointment when it wasn't who he hoped. During training exercises, he would occasionally veer off, nose to the ground, tail wagging as if he'd caught a familiar scent. But there was never anyone there. The staff assumed it was a quirk. Reyes wasn't so sure. Sometimes in the quietest hours, he'd see Max curled in his kennel, paws wrapped around a worn, fuzzy tennis ball, his one comfort item from before. And in her bedroom, Daisy would do the same. Separated by miles but tethered by memory, they waited, day after day, heart after heart, clinging to the same silent hope. Has the other one forgotten? It was just another long afternoon in the hospital. Daisy had been admitted again. Another round of tests, another cycle of treatments that made her body feel like it wasn't hers. The once vibrant girl now spent most days beneath layers of blankets, her bones sharp under thinning skin, her auburn hair reduced to wisps beneath a soft blue beanie. The TV in her hospital room played softly in the background, another feel-good segment to fill airtime. A story about a heroic police dog. She almost didn't look up. Then she heard the name, Officer Daniel Reyes. Her heart paused. On the screen, a video played. Footage of a German shepherd sprinting across a frozen lake, cracking ice beneath his paws. A child had fallen through, and without waiting for a command, the dog had plunged in after him. Moments later, the boy was safely ashore, his tiny hand clutching wet fur. But Daisy saw only one thing, the white star on the dog's chest, and the way he tilted his head, curious, alert, just slightly to the left, exactly like he used to when she'd whisper to him in the dark. She sat up straighter. "That's Max," she whispered. Her mother, Rachel, didn't even glance up from the insurance form she was filling out. "Honey, there are a lot of dogs that look like—" "No." Daisy's voice was firm, clear. "That's him." She pressed her fingers to the screen, tracing the outline of his silhouette. He looked stronger now, broader. But it was him. She didn't need proof. She had felt it, like a jolt to her chest. The boy in the news report had red hair, Daisy noticed. Max had always had a strange sensitivity to redheads. An echo of someone he used to know, perhaps. For the first time in years, something inside her flickered back to life. A tiny flame, barely there, but warm enough to feel. That night, she stayed awake collecting every article she could find. She printed them, cut them out, pasted them into a notebook she labeled Max's life. She didn't tell anyone, but she began writing him letters, quiet, unsent messages, telling him about the treatments, about the loneliness, about how she never stopped loving him. And in a quiet kennel across the state, Max too stirred more restlessly than usual. Because on some level, though he couldn't see or hear her, he sensed it. She had found him again. It started at a gas station just outside the city. Officer Daniel Reyes was filling up his cruiser when he spotted a familiar face across the lot. Older, a little more hunched, eyes shadowed with weariness. But he recognized him instantly. David Thompson, Max's first human family. The man looked surprised to see Reyes. They exchanged stiff nods, a few polite words. Nothing about Max, not yet. But as David walked away, a question burned in Reyes's chest. Did the girl ever ask about her dog? That night, Reyes couldn't sleep. He sat on his couch with a folder full of Max's service records, commendations, photos, tracking reports, and stared at the one worn item he kept tucked inside. The intake note from the day Max joined the program. It had Ella's name in the margin, faintly scribbled in pencil. He remembered how Max had always seemed different. Focused, yes, obedient, but haunted somehow, as if some part of him had been left behind. Now Reyes knew why. He checked hospital records the next day. A small breach of protocol maybe, but justified in his mind. The confirmation struck like a blow. Daisy Thompson, age 15, pediatric oncology, advanced leukemia. The girl who made Max into the dog he became was running out of time. So Reyes did something he rarely did. He reached out to the department chief. He presented a proposal, a pilot therapy program using retiring police dogs to assist with pediatric cancer treatment. He backed it with research, pages of studies proving the benefits of animal-assisted therapy. He knew Max was nearing retirement age. If the program was approved, he argued, Max could transition seamlessly into that role. Chief Vernon Hale was skeptical. "You're doing this for her, aren't you?" he asked bluntly. "That girl?" Reyes didn't deny it. "I think she saved him once," he said simply. "Maybe now he can return the favor." But bureaucracy moves slow. Time, however, did not. So Reyes turned to David. They met in a quiet cafe, halfway between the precinct and David's workshop. The conversation was short, focused, emotional. "She's getting worse," David admitted, voice cracking. But when she saw him on the news, it was like something came alive in her again. They crafted a simple plan. There was a school assembly happening the following week, standard K-9 demo. If Daisy could attend, no one would question Max's presence. David would convince Rachel to let her go. just for a few hours of normalcy. They wouldn't tell her what to expect. If it worked, it would be a moment she'd never forget. If it failed, they didn't finish that thought. They shook hands across the table. Two men who had both failed in different ways, now determined not to fail again. Across town, Daisy lay in bed, tracing the star on Max's chest in a photo she'd taped above her headboard. She had no idea the wheels were already turning. That hope was being built for her, piece by piece. The morning of the school assembly arrived cold and clear, sunlight glinting off frost-covered sidewalks. Inside the Thompson home, there was a quiet hum of energy not felt in months. Daisy stood before her mirror, dressed in real clothes for the first time in weeks. Her blue beanie sat snugly on her head, framing her pale face. Her legs trembled slightly from the effort, but there was a spark in her eyes, a flicker of purpose. "Are you sure about this?" Rachel asked gently from the doorway, worry etched in every line of her face. Daisy nodded. "I need this, Mom. Just for today." Rachel relented on one condition. She'd wear her mask in the crowd and leave the moment she felt tired. They arrived early. Meanwhile, Officer Reyes waited outside the gymnasium with Max. The dog was unusually alert, shifting from paw to paw, ears perked at every noise. "You know something's different, don't you?" Reyes murmured, brushing a hand over his partner's back. "Hang in there, buddy." Inside, students chattered and laughed, unaware that anything unusual was about to unfold. From her seat in the third row of the bleachers, Daisy scanned the gym, her body still, her heart pounding. She didn't know what she was searching for, only that something inside her was pulling taut. The principal stepped up to the microphone. "Today, we're joined by Officer Reyes and K-9 Officer Max, who many of you may recognize from last year's heroic rescue." Applause rippled through the gym as Reyes led Max down the center aisle. And then, Max stopped, mid-stride, just like that. His body went rigid, his ears tilted forward, tail frozen. The leash in Reyes's hand pulled tight. "Max, heel," Reyes said instinctively. But Max didn't move. Instead, he turned his head, slowly, deliberately, toward the bleachers, toward Daisy. Her breath caught. Time collapsed. The air between them felt charged, electric. She rose shakily to her feet, heart thudding in her ears. "Star Boy," she whispered. No one else knew the name. It was hers alone. What she'd called him during bedtime stories and whispered secrets, referencing the white star on his chest. Max lunged, not with aggression, but with something fierce and unstoppable. His leash slipped from Reyes's hand as the dog weaved between stunned students, eyes locked on his girl. Gasps echoed through the gym. Teachers moved to intercept, but Reyes held up a hand. "Let him go," he said, voice thick with emotion. "He's found her." When Max reached Daisy, he didn't jump or bark. He slowed and pressed his body gently against her legs. Daisy dropped to her knees, tears spilling freely. "You came back," she whispered, burying her face in his fur. "You remembered me." And then Max did something no one in the gym could have expected. He raised his right paw, slowly, gently, and placed it in her open hand. A ritual, one they hadn't done in 8 years. A gesture of trust, of recognition, of home. The gymnasium fell utterly silent. Even the skeptical principal blinked back tears. Up in the bleachers, Rachel stood frozen, her hand over her mouth, realizing at last what this moment meant. David stepped out from the back of the room, watching the scene unfold with a mixture of guilt and gratitude. No one moved, because somehow they all knew. This wasn't just a reunion, it was a return, of a dog to his girl, of a girl to herself. In the weeks that followed, everything began to change. With the support of Chief Hale and the hospital board, Max was officially reassigned, not as a K-9 officer, but as a certified therapy dog, stationed part-time at Riverside Children's Hospital. He became Daisy's daily companion again, not just during treatment, but during long nights, hard mornings, and quiet moments when words were too heavy. And Daisy, she began to heal. Her blood count stabilized. Her energy returned slowly, but surely. Doctors still used words like cautious and guarded, but Rachel saw what really mattered. Her daughter was smiling again, laughing, living. The city funded the therapy dog pilot program, using Max's story as its heartbeat. Other retired canines joined. Other kids found hope. Officer Reyes remained Max's handler, now splitting time between patrol work and hospital visits. He never forgot the moment Max ran to Daisy, proof that some connections outlast time, training, even distance. Daisy took steps again, unsteady but hers, and always, with Max at her side. They had lost 8 years, but they had each other now, and that was everything.